Ready to go? Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and call this Tooele City Planning Commission meeting to order this Wednesday, June 12th, 2024, the hour 7 p.m. here in City Council chambers. First item on our agenda tonight is our Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Second item on our agenda tonight is a roll call. Commissioner Hammer?
Here.
Commissioner Proctor?
Here.
Commissioner Sloan? Here. Commissioner Dunn?
Here.
Commissioner Jensen?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Please excuse Commissioner Robinson. Let's recognize Council Members Hanson and Manzione. Staff members Mr. Hall, Mr. Agard, Mr. Hanson, and Mr. Baker here tonight. All right. For some reason, we got the City Council reports on number 3, so we'll go ahead and let Councilwoman Manzione take it over for us.
I'm not ready.
No? Take your time. No rush. I could have swapped it too. It's not a big deal.
I hadn't even pulled up the agenda yet. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see. Last meeting, we had a kind of a longish meeting, so we did approve some of the things that you guys had done. The 16 acres on 3100 North. We approved that to high density residential, and sorry, I really wasn't prepared. We changed some city ordinances about panhandling, and we approved selling some water rights to U-Haul, and that's about it. Some contracts, so that's mostly it.
So
What
Mr.
questions do you
Sloan
have for
can
me?
no longer panhandle outside.
He can't
Figure out a way to supplement
on
that.
certain streets
Certain
specifically.
places I still can't.
Okay, good.
Yes. Sorry to be a little disjointed.
No, no worries. We threw you under the bus. I'll blame that on Mr. Hall, though.
It's okay.
Given the full power to change it as I
keep
needed
rushing
to.
at the
but-
last minute. It's mostly my fault.
No worries.
No,
Thank
what
you.
questions?
Comes up to you, come back after.
Yeah,
the training.
okay.
it
Do you have any
again.
questions for me?
Any questions for council? Quick and easy for you
Okay.
tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, there was, one thing that the council did approve was that on the 16 acres, it was with the stipulation that,
They joined the North
They
Tooele City
joined the
Special
North-
Service District. Condition, not stipulation.
oh,
Yes.
condition, that's right.
Yes,
So,
Condition. That's a good one.
yes.
Yeah,
And they had already been in talks with the North Tooele City Special Service District previously, so shouldn't have
Good.
been a surprise.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. All right, number 4 on our agenda here is a public hearing and decision. This one is continued from May 22nd, 2024. This is a consideration of a request for a conditional use permit approval by Evergreen Preschool and Child Care to allow an in-home child daycare business for up to 16 children at 529 Park Hill Drive in the R112 zoning district. Mr. Hall.
Thank you. And sorry about that with the agenda. I must have messed that up.
I thought it was fun.
As a reminder, this is a conditional use permit approval request. It was tabled by the Planning Commission on the 22nd of May for some more information from the applicant. They did provide some additional information. I'll go over that tonight, but I want to just kind of retread some of that territory in case there's anyone new looking at the application tonight or hearing about this. So again, it is this property on Park Hill Drive. This is R112 zoning. Single-family residential zones do allow in-home daycares as home occupations if they get up to the level, this is R112 zoning as we said, if they get up to the level of more than 7 children, then they have to get a conditional use permit to operate from the Planning Commission. It is allowable under the code, but they do have to see the Planning Commission about that conditional use to have up to 16. 16 is the maximum in residential zones, even with that conditional use permit. They did provide an outlay of the house. This was provided also for the state and county. State Health Department, County Health Department also have controls on in-home daycares. They worry about space for number of kids per space in the house, et cetera. It's all very controlled. This environment's already been approved by the state and county for up to 16 kids, just so we're clear on that. This is some information that the applicant provided by way of traffic analysis or looking at the patterns in the area. They did indicate that they advised their parents so that they'll be on the right side of the street to come up and around. So they'll be on the correct side of the street to pull over to the curb and drop off kids or to go into the driveway. We did talk some about the driveway. It's a large driveway that can accommodate a couple of cars besides the applicant's cars. And we'll get into that a little bit more too in the next picture here. So they've indicated that they have this area they can have the employee park. That was a concern that was brought up too. If you need more people to help you, and they do need one extra person for the 16 kids, that employee could park on a gravel area that's in back of the driveway or an extension of the driveway. So the full driveway would be available for parents to pull off of the road and not cause any problems that way. If that's more desirable, they can advise the parents to do that. And I think that's a good idea. We've suggested that's a good idea. Drop-offs and pickups are staggered. Some of the kids are from the same families, and that's been typical of daycares in residential areas. You have one kid who's 4 and one kid who's 2. There's no sense taking them to 2 different places. They go to the same daycare. So a lot of the traffic is really just limited to families that come with a couple of kids. We do want them to encourage the parents to use the driveway and to continue staggering those drop-off and pickup times. That should help. And then we talked about the employee parking as well. Just a thought, there was some talk in the previous hearing as well about traffic on Park Hill. Just looking at it from the air, this is an isolated neighborhood of sorts. There are 3 other streets that go directly out. One of these areas is a circle, so those all would drain out that way. There shouldn't be an excess of traffic coming down Park Hill. I don't know where it would be coming from if there is. The parents coming in for 8 to 16 children, dropping off. As long as we stagger them and have that driveway available, staff feels like it's an acceptable amount of traffic. We don't see any concerns. We have recommended approval at this time with those 5 conditions, including the staggering of times and the drop-off limits of 6:30 to 7. Weekdays, they only operate weekdays, no holidays. And the applicant will make sure they meet all those building and fire codes and the state and county requirements for licensing. So, do you have any questions for staff at this point, or?
Let's bring it back to the commission. I know there was that question about extra staff members, but the state has control over that, so.
Be 1 person.
Okay, and the state will monitor that on their own.
Right. If
Okay.
they have more than the 8 kids, they'll have 1 other person, so.
Perfect. Any other questions from the commission for staff?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. L. This item does require a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and open the public hearing now. If you would, please approach the podium, state your name for the record, and write your name for the record as well, please.
And my name is David Ripley, and I live on Park Hill Drive. Well, the map that you showed earlier about the flow of traffic is not being followed out already. They don't follow that at all. So, but anyways, when I had my house built in 2005, I was the second family to live there, and all the other ones were quite a bit after that, and the last one was probably within the last 4 or 5 years. But anyways, when we moved in, we were under the understanding to be a good homeowner, and we had to follow the covenants and conditions and restrictions on that in that area. And in that area, we were given the covenants, which I have in my hand. It says, under no circumstances shall a living unit be used for other than a single-family residence. No lot or living unit shall be used, occupied, or altered in violation of law so as to distract from the appearance or value of any other lot or living unit, so as to create a nuisance or interfere with the rights of any other owner. And another one says, no lot or living unit shall be used for business, professional, commercial, or institutional purposes. This is a residential area. It's not a combination business and residential. And that's what drew us to that property, and I'm sure that's what drew the other ones. And I've talked to some of the other owners, and they kind of have reservations about this too. It says here, this family's wanting to go up to 16 kids. Well, they were given, I guess, guidance to only go up to a certain amount. I've been told they've already exceeded that already. So if they've already exceeded this initial guidance, who's going to say that they're going to exceed this further guidance? And then also you're setting a precedence by changing a property to a business. If somebody else comes in later, you've already set the precedence. They may have some grander ideas, a big shop, automotive shop or whatever. So you're setting a bad precedence for that reason. And I'm sure there's other fire codes regulations. I'm not sure if they've already accumulated that. I'm sure there's got to be some sprinkler systems that got to be installed just for that reason. But again, there's things that's not even being done right now. The path of travel is not being followed. The staggering, I don't think is going to get followed. But again, this is a residential, not a combination, and that's why I'm against it. If they want to do 4 or 5 kids, I have no problems with them, but to change it from a residential to a business, that's where I have the problem. So that's what I have. I don't know if you all have any questions for me, but.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Ripley. Appreciate it.
My name's Rand Johnson, and I live at 536 Park Hill Drive. And I better name my name. And I've never done this before.
Take your time.
People don't look too scary, so
Nope, we all live here and work here just like you.
we've been here 19 years.
Good, good.
19 years have gone by very fast. So I guess I have more questions than I have answers or comments. I don't know enough about the impact of rezoning, and I don't know what it could possibly lead to. I know, as David pointed out, that we bought that house because it's very quiet, and we like it as a residential place. I don't know about what's required in terms of providing daycare for multiple children, and I can't make observations about the traffic pattern because there's a big bush in front of my office at home and I don't see outside. But I can tell you much, there's a number of cars parked there during the day. And from an aesthetic point of view, I'm not in favor of it, but I am concerned about the family in terms of their needs to provide additional income for their family. So I would feel, rather than think, because I don't know the details or what's required, I do know about these covenants that David has cited that would cause particular concern, and I don't know what impact that has on what decisions you all have to make or what you're governed by. I know that this was supposed to be a business-free environment. I do some laser cutting in my basement for some people who want a certain model railroad kit that I cut, but that's about it. I have no customers coming by or that sort of thing. So basically, I have concerns. I don't know how they would be addressed in the long term and what impact that would have on the neighborhood. I love the idea of just keeping it as it is. I don't mind them having a small number of children to care for. I just am concerned about 16 and about having additional parking and how that impacts how a neighborhood looks and what actually happens day to day. Can't govern that. That's not my responsibility. I don't know what impact they have to make sure the children are well cared for and that sort of thing. I don't know what oversight is had for that. I used to be in the long-term healthcare business. I know that there's a lot of oversight, and I work out of Dugway, I know there's a lot of oversight. But in the case of caring for children, I don't know what's required. So, again, I have more questions than I have a statement. I can just offer that I have concerns. I'd like to see what it would be looking into the future in terms of the impact it would have on the neighborhood. That's my comment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Okay, seeing no one else approach, I will go ahead and close the public hearing on this particular item and bring it back to the commission for further action. Do we have any other questions or comments from the commission?
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes,
I
Commissioner
guess
Hammer.
for staff. In Commissioner Robinson's motion, when we tabled it, he asked for a traffic study. Does this satisfy the intent of that motion?
I believe it does, and that's why we've brought it back to you. I don't know, aside from hiring a traffic engineering firm to come and look at the pattern and the impact, just looking at the neighborhood itself, counting up the homes, the properties, et cetera, and what potential impact it would have as an increase, I don't think it warrants asking a full engineered study, but that's me. If you all feel like you want that, that's different. So you'd have to decide. For me as staff, I don't think it warrants that kind of a study. Their observation and their answering the questions about the parking and such makes sense for me as a staff person. I've seen some of these come through in my time.
Can I ask a follow-up
Yep.
question? Can you go back to the traffic pattern?
Sure.
Path, sorry. How confident, I guess, it's all speculation, are we that the parents of these children will take this path?
I think that parents will generally, I couldn't put a number on the confidence level that I have
Right.
really, but I think parents generally will do what they're told to do for a business
Make
if
this
it means
work.
that the business gets to take care of their kids or keep operating. With that said, I think it's reasonable to assume that some people will not do that and would come up the other road instead and turn left. That's why I think the driveway is so important. It's a large driveway. If they maintain that open, keeping their cars in the garage, et cetera, I think that's probably as helpful as the pattern itself, getting them off the street. The pattern is really to keep them on the right side of the street so they're not making a U-turn in the middle of that road or 16-point turnabout. I've done a few of those in my life. I don't want to have that happening there. That would interrupt traffic. But I think if you stipulate that they need to do that, they'll do that to get the license.
Thank you.
As long as I'm up, do you want me to? I'd love the really good public comments, and I'd love to just respond to
Absolutely,
so there's
yes.
some understanding.
That'd be great.
Just as a quick, I'm going to go back a couple of slides. This zoning is R112, and so the gentleman, his name is right here, so Mr. Jensen, right? Johnson, got it. Mr. Johnson asked about the zoning, what the change of zoning would mean. There is no change of zoning proposed. It is a residential zone. You're 100% correct. This is a request that has to do with what we call a home occupation license. We allow, as a city, people to have certain businesses in their homes with as low an impact as possible. Recognizing that some, as in your narration, talking about the laser cutting, et cetera, and there's a business one street over operating obviously from the Google map on that pathway. These happen a lot of places. Some of them are very low impact. People have offices in home, et cetera, no clients coming. This one obviously has clients coming at staggered times, and it's different, in-home childcare. But in-home childcare has been a staple of kind of residential neighborhoods for so long that it was not excluded from home occupation standards. So there's no change of zoning. So it's not like, and Mr. Ripley's concern about in the future, does this set a precedent and say someone will come in and build a big shop and start machining parts for cars or fixing cars? Those are specifically things we don't allow as home occupations. So no, because it's not a zone change. It's still R112 residential zoning. This is just related to that home occupation license. They do already have a home occupation license with us as a city. This is increasing their number of kids that they can take care of. That leads me back to the oversight comments and the questions. It's a great concern. There is a lot of oversight for childcare in Utah. The state Board of Health takes care of that. The state departments come in and not investigate. That's too many news stories in my head. Not investigation, inspections. Inspections happen all the time from Tooele County Health. They would happen from the state as well. If they find a childcare business operating with more kids than they're supposed to have, that's a fast way to get shut down. And like you mentioned in your comments too, this is someone's livelihood. So I've not seen a lot of violations of that, but that's just me. I can't say that they'll never violate that number. If they do, they'll be in trouble fast. There are a lot of inspections for state and county for healthcare. We have a chance to review yearly on their license renewal as well, so we can always do that for oversight. Anything else from the comments we had to talk about? I wanted to talk about the zoning, et cetera, for sure. So
Actually, I do have one question.
Great.
And I don't know if you can answer it. Who is the governing body or the body that oversees the CCNRs and enforces those?
Oh, perfect. Thank you. That's perfect. That would be a homeowners association in this neighborhood. So, and I don't know, that would be their responsibility. CCNRs, as the city attorney pointed out last meeting, We cannot enforce those. Those are contracts between private citizens. We can only look at our code, our ordinance, and that's a great comment. Thank you. So the CCNRs may be there. We don't have a way to enforce those. It's not our role. We can only do what we do through the ordinance. Thank you, Commissioner. Perfect.
Well, that was good education for the public too, and me as well. That's,
Exactly. Thank you.
any other questions from the commission for staff? No. Roger, did you have something? Yes, please.
Thank you, Jared. Those were great answers. I hope you don't mind if I supplement a couple of things. As far as the CCNRs go, the recorded documents provide for enforcement of the rules of that neighborhood. And if the homeowners association could enforce them through demand letters or lawsuits, if the association isn't functioning, then it would be up to the property owners themselves to get together and bring an action against the offending property. But absolutely what Jared said, we have no ability to enforce those. They're contractual between the home property owners. Tooele City, until not very long ago, maybe 5 years, only allowed up to 7 children. There were 2 problems that we encountered that caused the City Council to change its policy on daycares to allow 16. The first was that the state already allows 16, and so we had an ordinance that did not allow what the state licenses. And we had a lot of questions, well, if the state, which is the inspecting governing body of these outfits, allows 16, then why wouldn't the city have an ordinance that allows them as well? It's a good question. The second area of concern came from not only daycare operators, but parents who were shopping for daycares and finding an insufficient supply of those services. And it was difficult for many parents to find daycare they felt comfortable with. And so the council expanded this to 16 children to add an element of increased services to those who need them, increased supply to meet the demand. And so those are the 2 main reasons the council enacted a change. But in exchange for doing that, the council also imposed requirements that do not apply to the smaller daycares. And those are listed in the code. They have their hoops that people have to go through. And they do address traffic and noise and parking and hours of operation and the number of employees and all of those kinds of things. Fencing. So it was a policy decision and a trade-off and a compromise, and from our perspective, it's worked pretty well. And I hope it will continue to work well. I concur that the traffic study does not need to be a professional engineering study costing many thousands of dollars, because the statute does not allow us to impose any conditions to eliminate all impacts. It only allows us to impose reasonable conditions to mitigate impacts. And so a reasonable condition for a single residential property home occupation would be this kind of analysis. It's not highly technical, but it's sufficient. With regard to this being limited to residential uses, in fact, this house will continue to be a residential use. The main character of the use isn't changing. This business would be more of a accessory use or an ancillary use to the main use of the house as a house. People live there and will continue to live there. So that may help provide a little understanding about it continues to be residential in nature with a limited business occurring inside the home. So that's the input I have for you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. I appreciate any questions from Mr. Baker from the commission. Great. All right. I'll entertain a motion on item number 4.
Chair, I move that we approve the request for conditional use permit application 2024-008 by Victoria Burnham to allow the operation of home occupation daycare preschool for up to 16 children on the property at 529 Park Hill Drive located in an R112 zoning district based on the findings and facts subject that in the report dated June 7th, 2024.
I've got a motion to approve from Commissioner Anderson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second from Commissioner Jensen. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Dunn?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
I am Chairman Hamilton. I also vote aye. This one passes 7-0. I am going to switch the next two on our agenda here just so we can excuse our minutes taker and so she doesn't have to stay for training. If she doesn't want to, you are welcome to, Catherine. But we'll go ahead and do a review and approval of the Planning Commission minutes for the meeting held on May 22nd, 2024. Are there any additions or corrections to those minutes? I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion we pass as is.
I got a motion to approve from Commissioner Proctor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And a second from Commissioner Hammer. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Dunn?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
I am Chairman Hamilton. I also vote aye. Those pass 7-0. Now we'll go back up to number 5 and is a Planning Commission training. It's public hearings and comment policy by Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Commission. Good to be with you. First thing I'd like to indicate is that I think with the answers that Jared and I gave tonight, that ought to be at least 20 minutes of your training requirement.
I agree.
I
second that.
10, and we've got a half an hour, something like that. I actually think that would work, but Andrew's the gatekeeper on that. I had this open. Let me just open it again. Okay. I spoke to the City Council recently, and I wanted to speak to you as well about this issue. It's an issue that comes directly from the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And I had to look up where it is in the Utah Constitution, but it's Article 1, I think Section 15, the freedom of speech. So this is a public building. This is a public meeting. Why couldn't the public come here and say anything they wanted for as long as they wanted, in any way they wanted, and to enjoy their First Amendment freedom of speech rights? It's partly a rhetorical question because you know I don't expect you to give me an answer, but it's also an important question because the freedom of speech is the fundamental right in the Bill of Rights with others, of course. The Supreme Court has said that not all speech is the same, not all speakers are the same, and not all places of speaking are the same. And they've gone through, over the 2 centuries, they've gone through a number of situations and have left opinions in cases that tell us what we can and cannot do in different places with different people. So the court has found a traditional public forum. A forum is a place. A traditional public forum is the broadest place in which people can speak their minds. You can walk down the street with a sign that says vote for whoever all day long, and you can talk and everything, as long as you're not pushing people around or stepping out into the street, you're not obstructing, you're not creating harm. You can do that, and the city can't and wouldn't want to put restrictions on you. In fact, when we were building this city hall and officed in the old J.C. Penney's building, a group of picketers lined up there on the sidewalk and held out a large banner that said, "There are rats at City Hall." And I didn't appreciate it, but I wasn't frightened by it either. And there were some that wanted to have them hauled off. And if they wouldn't leave, arrest them. And I understand that. It was kind of insulting to those of us who dedicate our lives to public service. And it was somewhat disruptive. I mean, you know, that building is all glass in front, and those poor workers that work by the window it was intimidating to them. And anyway, I don't want to belabor that, but that's an example of a traditional public forum. Traditional means you can go to the town square, say whatever you want. Another that we're going to talk about, there's a number of them, but the one we're going to talk about is a limited public forum. It is public space, the public can come, the public can speak, but because of the nature of what you're doing and the nature of the place, you can actually put limitations on it, because you're here for a particular governmental purpose. And the First Amendment has to be honored until speech interferes with the purpose for which you are here. You're here to conduct the city's business. So basically, you can regulate, put rules on any kind of speech that interferes with what you're trying to accomplish, your business. So I'd like to walk through with you briefly the things that you can do. You don't have to. So the City Council, let me mention a couple other things. The City Council asked me to have this discussion because they have a public comment period where anyone can come, and they're not limited to the subject of the public hearing. And they can talk about pretty much anything. We have no rules on it right now. You traditionally have not had a public comment period. You could, if you wanted. It's just up to you. But what we're talking about does apply to public hearings that you have, like the one you had tonight. And they came up and they spoke civilly about this topic at hand. So all of the things I'm about to tell you have been determined by different cases of the United States Supreme Court over a very long period of time, since the 1780s. If someone wants to speak to you, you can require them to give you their name. And if they're not willing to give you their name, they don't get to speak. You can require that they let you know their area of residence. And if they're not constituents of Tooele City, then you don't have to listen to them because they're not your constituents. This period of time is for your constituents. You don't have to limit it. You can let people come from Washington, D.C. or wherever. You can require their, I recommend against requiring their physical address, because then we get into the privacy of the people speaking. And if it's controversial, there could be retaliation by other persons if it's a volatile enough issue. You can limit the time per speaker. That's part of managing your meeting. The City Council and I believe the Planning Commission are doing a 3-minute time. And it's good to not say you have 3 to 4 minutes, because 3 to 4 minutes means 4 minutes. So, and it should be enforced, but gently. We don't handcuff people that go 3 minutes and 3 seconds. That's not the type of thing we're trying to accomplish. Did you bring cuffs tonight?
I do buzzing.
Okay, well, I'll hurry along then. If someone's going too long, one of the things you can do to enforce it is cut the mic. And then it's not broadcast to the world in outer space, and the public here can't hear it. People could consider it rude, but it would be rude if you didn't have a rule and you just decided you were tired of them and cut it off. But you have a rule, and if they break it, then you can cut it off. You can have a timer up there, visual, or a timer that makes an alarm with it. You can have a total length of time for any given public hearing. You can say we're going to have a public hearing, anyone can speak, but this public hearing will not go longer than 30 minutes. And if someone takes up all the time or well, you would enforce the 3-minute rule, but basically that would limit it to 10 people, and they just have to know that. If there's enough clamor, then maybe you'll say, you know what, come back in 2 weeks and we'll have 30 more minutes, whatever. You have discretion to do those things. You can prohibit people from making irrelevant comments. Now, this is not an example of an irrelevant comment. If you approve this conditional use permit, it will lower my property values. That's an example of a comment that's probably not accurate and not supported by evidence, but it's still relevant. So if you're having a public hearing on a conditional use permit for a daycare, and someone wants to speak to you for an hour and a half about the Palestinian conflict, you don't have to allow that, not for 30 seconds, let alone an hour and a half, because it's way outside what you do, and you only have to accept comments relevant to what you do. And this is where I went to a presentation, and the Harriman city attorney that gave it had dozens of video clips from city council meetings all over the country. And I apologize, I'm not an entertainer, I didn't have the time to go looking for them, but they were compelling because we saw people get up and rant about LGBTQ issues, about immigration issues, about ideologies. And those city councils had no policies, no rules. And it was very difficult to stop these people from taking over the meeting for their own personal purposes and disrupting the meeting. So I've never seen that happen, and so it never occurred to me that we would want to look at regulating that. But I think it only has to happen once, and you'll never forget it again. So I encourage you to go to the to Google videos, YouTube videos on the Los Angeles City Council and see the awful things that have happened there. Now, if someone wants to come here and look you in the eye and call you corrupt and use profanities, it's hard to know where the line is between protected speech and unprotected speech. But this is not a forum for them to come and call you criminals. That's not in your jurisdiction. If they want to do that, they can go to the radio, the newspaper, the television, or whoever, the police. But they can't just come here and
Right across the street.
and blast you. Now, if a person comes here and says, I disagree violently with your decision, I think you are biased and have personal interests, and that you're corrupt in your reasons for having that, you got to take it because it's germane to the thing you're looking at. So it can be hard to know where the line is, but we'll just figure that out as we go. Again, we haven't had a lot of crises. You can limit, I just talked about disrespectful and attacking comments, but you have to allow critical comments. You can prevent obscenity, but you have to allow some level of profanity if that's how people want to speak. Again, it's hard to know where the line is. That's a situation where the chairman would just have to step up and say, you know what, we're a civil body, we're doing the public's business, we ask that you be respectful of what we're doing and the public, and act like an adult, and at least an intelligent adult. And don't throw around profanities. And you can do that kind of thing to try to gain control back of your meeting.
A lot nicer words than what I would use, though.
Okay, if I ever have to ask for you to be hauled off, then we're in real trouble.
Exactly.
You can prohibit or limit signs in here. Let's say you were doing a particularly controversial rezone, and the neighbors wanted to come with signs and show you how they feel. You can allow it, but you don't have to. If you decide it would disrupt your meeting, then you can limit those. The city council has proposed to not allow them in this room, but to allow them in the rotunda so long as they don't interrupt people wanting to come and go and disrupt the meeting. You can prohibit clapping, cheering, booing, hissing, and any other disruptive behavior. It's important that if you're going to allow cheering and clapping, that you have to allow it by both sides of the issue. You can't just say, all in favor may clap, you know? You can control where you put a public comment period, although the public hearings that you deal with need to go with the item that you're doing, but you could put all those at the end if you wanted. You could put them wherever you want. You have no obligation to broadcast this on social media. You certainly can, and you are, which is great. And it's always important not to appear to retaliate. If someone has let's say you're giving people, you're being nice, and you're letting them go 3.5, 4 minutes, and someone stands in front of you that really doesn't like what you're doing and start to be critical, and if you say, you get 3 minutes, and if you don't stop, we're taking you. You just have to treat everybody the same. So, although I wouldn't recommend arresting everyone that speaks over 3 minutes.
So if you do it the first time.
It's done, yeah.
That's right.
You set precedent.
So that's the kind of the lane bumpers on what you can do. I've had this discussion with the city council, and they asked me to prepare a draft policy, and in fact, although I've sent it to them, it's being discussed publicly before they even get a chance to do it. So, but I wanted to show it to you so you can get an idea of what you could do if you wanted to. And I encourage you to have a discussion on whether to have a policy and what should be in it. Planning commissions can be much more volatile than city council meetings because this is where the state requires public hearings to be held on rezones. And this is where city policy requires conditional use hearings. So,
Yes, please. Good question for you, Mr. Baker.
yeah, of course.
We're dealing with a public comment period, and I'm treating that as a specific agenda item. I know that's how the city
Yes.
council does it, county council does it. We don't traditionally do that here, but could we and should we extend these same rules for consistency's sake to a public hearing, which we do deal with?
Yes, and in fact, if you look at this, the last sentence of the introductory paragraph, it says, this policy shall apply to city council meeting public hearings. So these rules, and that's why at the top, I used to have it say a public comment period policy, and I thought that's too narrow. So this is just a policy on public comments in general, whether they be in a public comment period or a public hearing. It applies to them both. Public hearings can be even more restrictive because the subject on which you're discussing is going to be narrower. And so if you're considering a daycare, you don't have to listen to people talking about the dangers of high-density housing. That's not what's in front of you, and you don't have to listen to that. So the council is looking at doing many of the things we just talked about. Name and area of residence, comments by people that have an interest in your community, so it's not just someone's it's not some ideologue from some other place that doesn't have an interest in your community. You can limit it to relevant topics. They're looking at doing that, 3 minutes per speaker. They put that if no time limitation for a hearing is designated, the length of time for comment shall be limited to 30 minutes unless indicated otherwise by the chair. So on a budget hearing, they probably wouldn't put a 30-minute limit on it because you very well might have more people that the council ought to hear from. If you had if you wanted to ban dogs from all residential zones, you can't, and you wouldn't, but if you tried, you'd fill the room. And you might not get out of the room in one piece if you limit it to 30 minutes. So you have discretion based on what you're dealing with. No disrespect, no obscenity, no clapping and booing, and no signs. And then I have written comments, a section on written comments. People can submit them as long as they do it ahead of the meeting, and they follow the same rules. Theoretically, this would allow it to be as long as they wanted it to be. They could submit a book, and you wouldn't have to read it. You would just say, we got a book. Let the record show. That kind of thing. And also they have a sign prohibition in this room. So that's the theory of behind the limited forum public First Amendment, and that's an introduction to the policy the council will be considering next week. I would invite a discussion between yourselves of whether you would like to have a policy and what you think it might contain.
Mr. Bolzer and I were actually started that discussion when I was chairman a couple years ago, and then when Matt took over, we didn't feel like it needed to move forward, but I don't see it's a bad idea. I really don't. It just gives you guidelines on how to do it. We do it the same every time anyway,
Right.
on the discretion of the chairman, but I don't see like it's a bad idea to just have a guideline on how to do it. It'll help
A
it.
peremptory policy will protect you from the outliers.
Exactly. And that was my concern is we don't have a set time. We don't have set guidelines on what we do every time. It kind of changes, but I'd like to see something set in stone. That's why if someone new comes and sits in this seat, they know, oh, I've got a guideline. This is how we're going to do it.
Right. And we would put these on the Planning Commission's page on the city website, so people know ahead of time.
I think, and it's
They're
helpful
not
for
going to
them.
read that.
It's helpful for them, you know. It'll take them a few times to get it, but
Right, at least we can say, hey, well, it's there if you'd only look.
it's there. But I do have one question for, how easy is it to cut that mic from that seat? Jared? Just with one button, huh?
Where'd the button go?
We've never had that issue, but I was curious.
Yeah, I didn't know either.
Good. Any other questions?
Maybe this is a reach, but this is not a huge room. If we're going to allow demonstrations in the rotunda, I can see a situation where that doesn't allow the business to go on in here. What kind of, if we're, on one hand, we're saying, yes, you're allowed to have your signs and demonstrate in the rotunda, which is a public room versus a public meeting. You know, how many times have we had somebody that left here and went out and continued their discussion out in the foyer, which even without it being hot, projects in here pretty well. At what point, and this is probably a rhetorical question, at what point can the chair shut the door on that, pardon the expression, knowing this is an open meeting? We can't
Right.
shut the door.
You know, after all these years, I honestly don't know what the law is on shutting the door. You probably could, as long as you had some communication out there that the door can be opened by whoever wants to come in. I could look into that, but if you need to shut the door, then we probably need to do something else anyway. And I would invite two different sets of uniforms to come in. The fire department uniform to look at loading and occupancy. And the police department to also look at crowd control and prevent assaultive, disruptive behavior. Again, we've never had to deal with it, right? So it's hard to know, but if you have a policy in place, then it's easier to deal with. If it is a planned demonstration, they have to get a special event permit for a political activity. So if there's something on Facebook that says, come protect your neighborhood and speak at this, and demonstrate in the City Hall Rotunda at this date and time, that's a planned event that will be disruptive. They can't do it without a permit. And frankly, if they applied for a permit, it wouldn't get approved. Because you can't do a safe demonstration in a small space and not disrupt the meeting. So we would permit it in some other location. So a demonstration out here is just not likely to be allowed. But you could foresee a small one that wouldn't be disruptive, and that's
That was the small one.
that's fine.
Shouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, as long as they're quiet, I don't care.
Right.
Respect us and move on.
And it's important that the public and staff and you feel safe going in and out. So at the library, for example, they have a sidewalk going from the parking lot to the building. And people have wanted to demonstrate there with and without a permit. And we've simply said no. The purpose of this sidewalk is for patrons to safely access this building. So you simply may not occupy it. And you can't intimidate or disrupt or frighten the people that want to use this library by that sidewalk. So we can tell them, but you can go over there on some other part that doesn't disrupt that traffic. So there are things you can do. Are there parts about the council's policy that you think you want to take out or add to? Or revise for yourselves? I didn't intend to put pressure on you by saying, this is what the council wants. Do you want anything different?
Are we required to have a public comment period?
Or not?
We don't have one now, so.
We don't have one.
Exactly. So at this point, why would we want?
Just pretty much for the,
This would be
Yeah.
a
Other than
public
when-
hearing
just a public
policy.
hearing.
Public hearing.
But on the other hand, our bylaws allow the chair a fair amount of latitude as far as setting rules and agendas and things like that, and it
Yeah.
could conceivably. I know that the county council went through this a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
They had two public comment periods. One at the beginning, where everybody wanted to talk about the stuff that was down the thing and didn't make any sense. And then another one at the end to catch everything that had been caught before. Horrible policy. Two is not better than one. Sometimes more is just more, but they've cut that down and it's much more manageable now.
To your point, Commissioner Anderson, the Planning Commission probably would limit this policy to public hearings and not even mention a public comment period. That kind of thing.
just kind of a standard for public hearings is all I was ever
Right,
looking
right.
after, just so we had something to follow. So it's consistent mainly, yeah. But
Right.
I think it'd be good if it would help the chair out. I mean, it does affect the rest of us, but not as much as the chair because he has to run the meeting. But I've noticed, I think that all the chairs that we've had since I've been in have done a good job. I remember a couple years ago, there was a lady that was talking about her trees and stuff that didn't have anything to do with what we were talking about. But it's important to let them talk. And I noticed Tyson let her talk and just kind of get it out. And, you know, she was happy by the end, even though it wasn't germane to what we were talking about at all. So I think they do a really good job. But I think it probably would help them if they think it would.
That's exactly how you could do it. If you had 200 angry people, then the policy would help you manage a little better.
Good.
everybody else good?
Would you like to see a draft for the Planning Commission come back?
I think so. Everybody good with that? Just something we can look at and review and see what we can add to it.
I
Kind of
would
limit it.
recommend doing it by resolution of the Planning Commission. We don't get to do those very often,
Do
but
resolutions.
it's a good way to do it. That lays out the policy reasons in support of it, and it also creates a clear record as to when it started and what it is. And we'll have you sign it.
Ooh,
So,
great.
yep. I have a red pen if you want to sign it in
The
red.
signature is going to be popular
So
someday.
red pen, yes.
Red one.
Well, thank you very
Sell it in
much.
your store.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Roger.
Exactly. All right, thank you guys for that. Would you sign that for
You
the
don't have to
record,
put your
please?
address down, but
Just your location area.
Okay. By the way, this, I might as well bring up that you don't have to have applicants do that. Applicants are already known, they have their name, everything else over here. They're not speaking in a public hearing. They're speaking as an applicant at your invitation. You don't have to have them sign that. You can if you want, but you don't have to.
That's good to know, yeah. We've already got their information. Good. All right. Moves us on to number 7 on our agenda here. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Commissioner Sloan.
I forgot to ask a question. The rats in City Hall.